Selamat pagi, ni hao, and guten tag. Welcome back to the Product Uncensored show. This is the show where we talk about all things product with product people, focusing on Southeast Asia with me, your host, Colin Pell. Today, we're at episode 3, and if this is your first time on the show, welcome. And also, where have you been? Please check out our episodes on YouTube. We're also available on all the major podcasting platforms such as Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple. Links will be in the description, or check us out on www.productuncensored.com. If you have enjoyed our shows so far, please do subscribe and follow so you'll know exactly when our new episodes drop. And while you're at it, do give us a like too. Just like that. Perfect. Today's show is special because we have our first female guest. She hails from the land of Das Auto and has called Singapore home for the last 7 years. She's really an amazing person, a good friend, and the current CTO of Zalora. She is none other than Silvia. Welcome to the show, Silvia.
Hi, Colin. What a nice intro.
Yes, I was actually trying to find all the German words that I could, put into the show, and I only managed like Guten Tag and Das Auto. So
Yeah, but you already won me over with that. I'm like, whoa, okay.
so did I say it right?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, yay. Now I can go to Germany. Fantastic. So yes, you just just in case you didn't hear it, right? So you have made history because you are the first female guest on the Product Uncensored show. So congratulations, you are now part of history.
Wow. Thanks.
Yeah, super cheesy, but hey,
What
it's
an honor.
it's a big deal for me. So I'm going to make a big deal for you anyway. Uh, so first things first, we need to start with something very important. I usually start by introducing my guests with their full name. I actually didn't dare do it with yours because I wasn't sure how we pronounce your surname. So how do
Oh,
we say it? Is it Tom?
okay, so in German or in Germany, people would say Tom.
Tom.
But actually, it's in an international environment, or let's say outside of Germany, yeah, it's a bit tricky, like how exactly, where's the emphasis, etc. So most people say Tom, and I've adopted that. So when I'm in Germany, okay, then I use however you pronounce it in Germany, because people are familiar with that and they know then exactly what the spelling is. But here, when I'm answering the phone or whatever, then I say Tom because it's easier for people.
Okay, but on this show, we want to get it right because it's the uncensored show. So what is the actual
Right.
pronunciation?
Silvia Thom.
Silvia Thom. Wow, that sounds even more sophisticated. You should definitely start by introducing your name in German. It sounds so much
Okay.
cooler.
Okay.
All right. So let's jump straight into this because I have a lot of questions and we don't have that much time. Let's
Okay,
start
go
with
for it.
your background in product management, right? Because you've done quite a few stops around the world, right? I think you've worked in Japan, you've worked in Spain, you've worked in London. You then came to Singapore. So tell us a little bit, just maybe a couple of minutes about how that came to be, especially going into product management.
So I was born and raised in Germany and actually did all my education there. So sometimes people are expecting that, oh, you probably also studied abroad. Actually, I didn't. So really up until 2005, I spent my whole life in Germany, and I did my university degree actually at a university that's really close to my hometown. But then after that, I started to go out, and I went to London first. Was there for a very brief time, just 6 months, but like it had a really, really deep impression on me. London is a very international, very cosmopolitan city. And so suddenly I was exposed also to people who had either, grown up in different cultures or who were traveling a lot. And that definitely, in not just inspired me, I think it really opened my opened my eyes as well, and gave me a totally different look at the world. And to be honest, after that, I just couldn't get enough. So I had to go back to Germany and wrap up a few things at my university. But while doing that, I was like, I want to get out again. You know, I want to experience another country, another city, another culture. I love learning new languages. So especially during my time at school and during university. So then also being exposed to different languages and getting better at them was definitely part of the motivation. And I try all sorts of things, and I ended up in Madrid. I stayed there for a year, and then after that I wanted like a new challenge. And the biggest thing that I could come up with the biggest challenge for me personally that I could imagine was, wow, what if I could go to Japan, you know, and again, learn the language, live there, just understand what it's like. And it was Japan because at that point in time, I had some experience in the music industry, and Japan is still is a very, very important and big music market. And the other thing was also really, you know, this cultural exposure, like it at least from looking at it from far away, because I had never been to Japan. Okay, so this is the other crazy part. Like, I wanted to go there and straight away live there, even though I had never been to Japan. But the motivation was really this. Okay, this is so far off. This is going to be such a big challenge for me. I want to know what that feels like. I want to know what that does to me also as a person, and how I can grow from it. And so I got actually into a program from the German government, which I'm super grateful for, because they recognize that Germany has deep relationships with Japan, and that also every year basically they are sending a couple of people to learn the language and to get some business knowledge about Japan, and to really live there, work there, understand really how Japan and the Japanese market ticks. And I was super blessed to join that program. This was in 2008. And I stayed there for a bit more than 2 years. And then, I'm cutting it here short a little bit. We can dive more into it later if you want to. But then from Japan, I had to go back to Germany for a bit. There was a while where I wanted to be close to my family. And afterwards, sort of venturing out again. And this is what brought me to Singapore, because at that point in time, back then, my boyfriend, now husband, he actually spent it was more than a year, I think a good 2 years, traveling in and out of Southeast Asia, you know, Bangkok, Singapore, Jakarta, Manila, you name it, working with different people, different startup businesses. And I would visit also every now and then. So we both decided, okay, why don't we venture out together, you know, set foot in Singapore, and stay maybe for a year or two, which has now become 7 years, because we loved it so much. That yeah, we really settled down here.
Okay, that's very interesting. So I want to go back to Japan first.
Yeah.
You said you'd never been to Japan, right? So, and you suddenly decided Japan. Was it like, you know, you close your eyes and, you know, point at the map? How did you decide Japan?
It was a tiny bit more strategic, but you know, not so much. I think it was really this motivation. What is the most exotic place, and you know, the furthest out there, and something that I've never been to. And the strategic part was then to see, like, okay, how could it work out with my career plans? So at that point in time, I was still very eager. I had done a couple of jobs in the music industry, but I was still very early in my career. So, these were very short-term appointments. And like I said, Japan was at that point in time, and I think it actually still is, after the US, it's the second biggest music market. So it, that made it also very attractive from that point of view.
Okay.
I was hoping to sort of connect the dots there, and also be able to work in the music industry, which I did also in the end.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. Was it in Japan that you moved into product management, or was it after Japan?
No, it was in Japan actually. Yeah. So when I first arrived so I was in Tokyo, by the way. So all the time based in Tokyo. When I first arrived, because this was with the scholarship from the German government, first I learned the language. And because the language is, it's a very, very important tool to get access to the culture and to really understand it. There's definitely a number of things that, as it is with, I guess, any language, that you cannot really grasp it if you translate it. It's like the feeling, it's a certain emotion, and especially in Japan, there are so many customs and so many like things you say in very specific situations. So I enjoyed that, learning the language, and I did that full time for a good 10 months. And that prepared me then to really go out and work with people at a record company first. So I spent another couple of months at a Japanese local record company. I was the only foreigner there. 300 people. I was the only foreigner. So that definitely improved my Japanese as well. Because my boss on the very first day, she said like, okay, and she said that in English. She's bilingual. So she said like, okay, you're here now. We're going to start working and show you a couple of things, but this is a Japanese company, so from now on it's in Japanese. And then she switched to Japanese and she never switched back. And which was tough, but it was of course the best school that you can get. And then I started, because of this job, I started to make connections with people in the Japanese music industry. And when this appointment was over, I got in touch with old colleagues from Sony Music who had moved on to a Kickstarter-like platform. So, proper digital product, people could sign up and they could get their music projects crowdfunded. So it was, for me and also for this company, I would say, this perfect triangle, because I was in Tokyo. They wanted to get access to the Japanese market, but didn't know anyone there, didn't have any network. I had a small, but some kind of network to really get started. I knew at that time a lot about Japan. And then, for them it was comfortable because I was from Germany as well. So they could just, easily interact with me. And the product that I managed was actually launching this platform then for the Japanese market. And I always say I did product management before even knowing that this is product management, because I had a different title, and I did also a lot of marketing stuff. But really, I was the person launching the platform, talking day in and day out with the tech team, which was based in Europe. And so later on, I kind of figured out what I was actually doing.
Very nice, very nice.
Yeah.
So again, it sounds like with everyone that I've actually spoken to who are a bit more senior in the scene, they seem to have stumbled into it, and it sounds like you did the same, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's fast forward to the time where you decided, with your then boyfriend to go to Asia. Did you go to Asia first? Was it Singapore first, and then you got the job, or did Zalora come knocking on your door? How did that happen?
How did that happen? Everything was sort of happening in parallel. So my husband had like someone contacted him. Okay, can you open up a new business for us in Southeast Asia? And that gave us the final push to say let's move there. So the decision to sort of go to Singapore and to start a new life and find a job was already made. And then he set foot here first. But within 3 months, I actually, I was visiting him here, and then I also had a couple of job interviews, just very loosely. I mean, it was honestly, it was during the Christmas and New Year's Eve break. So I was really exhausted from a very tiring year of work, and I flew into Singapore, and I just wanted to chill. But then one day after the other goes by, and suddenly I had a few talks with people, and for me it was very casual. But by the time I was flying home, I had already this offer from Zalora. So through some contacts, I got in touch with the previous CTO, met him. This was New Year's Eve, 31st of December 2012. So it was really in the afternoon before everyone just wanted to go home and, go party, and enjoy and take some time off the next day. My interview was sort of squeezed into that afternoon.
Could you actually concentrate? Because were you able to concentrate because it's like 31st?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I was on holiday. I mean, I still, of course, took it serious, and it was an official interview. And so I went there and had a chat with different people, one after the other. I think I must have stayed there for a good 3 hours, which means it's going well, right? So, I was chatting with them for the whole afternoon, and we didn't have any big plans for the evening. I think we went into town later.
Okay.
And I stayed for a few more days, but they were very quick. So I think the thing with Zalora was also they were much quicker than the other companies. They were like, we want you, when can you start? And I was like, okay. I was planning to move here in February, and this is then also what I did.
Yeah.
So I honestly, I have to say, this was, when it comes to moving countries, this was the fastest and the easiest that it's ever been.
Mm-hmm. But at that time, Zalora, it was 2012, was it? Or
Yeah, it was. Zalora wasn't even a year old, so
yeah.
it was really early. Yeah,
So
or just a year old. Yeah.
So how did you decide? Because Zalora is so new, so I'm very sure you would not have heard about them at that point in time, or at least they would have been very new. And so, what made you decide to, go for this very young company, which decided to interview you on New Year's Eve?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I was or quite familiar with the business model, or the business itself,
Mm-hmm.
because in Europe we have a company called Zalando. So
Yes.
they with exactly the same business model. I mean, the relation even shows with the name.
With the name.
It's not so different. And also, we have, or at least back then, our investor structure was very, very similar. And so before joining Zalora, I had worked at a company in Berlin called Glossybox. And they were also backed up by Rocket Internet and by Schöneweg. And these are also the two main investors in Zalora in those early days. So that's why I had a good idea I knew these guys were serious. I knew these guys are extremely experienced in launching, especially e-commerce businesses. So, that definitely gave me a lot of confidence. And then everything else was really up to the people I met during the interview. This has always been very important to me. Like, can I connect? with them. And also the product itself, you know, I like fashion, especially in the way that we at Zalora look at fashion. You know, you play with different brands, with different styles. It's all about self-expression. So yeah, those were the reasons why I was like, yeah, this is good. Let me give this a try. But I had you are absolutely right. I had no idea I would stay this long with the company. You know, I'm like a dinosaur there right now, or like a vintage Zalorian. That's what we used to. That's what we call ourselves internally.
Vintage.
Yeah,
I like that word. Yeah, it's a very fashion
yeah,
word, right? Vintage.
yes,
But
yeah.
you've been in Zalora literally since the day you started work in Singapore. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah.
And
Yes.
you literally rose through the ranks in Zalora. So the part which I think a lot of people usually want to know is, yeah, how did you rise through the ranks, right? Like, what did you need to do to actually go through? Because one way of doing it is you jump companies. So basically, you amass skill set and experience, and then you move on. But yours is actually quite a unique story in that sense, especially in our generation, where you've actually stayed with the same company and gone through the ranks. Maybe you can share about what was it, especially maybe from moving from a senior position to a very distinct leadership position. What
Yeah.
was the biggest thing that you needed to do, or what did you show that allowed you to sort of go up?
Yeah. Um. So again, I of course I could have not planned for this. Like really, like that's how I feel when I look back. Um, and maybe this is also a bit of part of the secret sauce, you know, that I didn't have these uh, big expectations. I had, you know, specifically at this company, I had these expectations of myself. You know, I always wanted to learn new things, move on. I'm someone who also gets, you know, quite impatient if I don't progress, etc. And so the key thing was that, first of all, Zalora provided me with this environment. The company was so young, and as you can imagine, then every year it was also a different company. There were always, you know, grew very fast. The teams changed. Our product practices became more mature every year, and I would say I was lucky enough that somehow the growth of the company was always in sync with my personal growth. This is not something that you can plan for, so I feel like, yeah, I've been just very lucky with this. But still, I think it's an important lesson learned. You know, like what I did was I always sort of checked in with myself. Am I still in sync with the company? You know, am I still motivated? Am I still learning things? Am I aligned with the values of the company? That's actually something that I had never asked myself before. That's also a certain you know, an awareness that I developed while being at this current company. And yeah, the advice that I would give to people is to look at exactly those things. Not all of them have to be always perfectly aligned, because it's very difficult, but just have this internal monologue with yourself, like which one of those things are important. You know, are you in sync with them? And if not, then it's probably time to move on, because then you're probably holding yourself back, or you're not advancing as much as you should. So that's for me, for myself. But then there's of course also you know, the people around me. So the number one and the most important thing is to have in the leadership team people who support you. And you know, the person who held the position, Karthik is his name, so he had the CTO position before me, and he was the person who hired me. And just throughout the years, he coached me, he mentored me, and he helped me. Again, both of us didn't know that this would last for several years. Sometimes this stops also for one reason or another. But in our case, we did go for such a long stretch. Yeah, and that was really good. So really having an internal supporter. And then someone who also, when there is an opening for a leadership position, who advocates for you, who says like, okay, like I think this person, I think Silvia is the right one for this position because of X, Y, Z. Because the other people might not have paid attention to what you achieved or just don't know you as well. That has been definitely a big part of my success. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And do you think, because I think in part of your answer, you've actually opened up another question that I thought is very interesting, because you were saying you actually took the time to see whether you were still aligned with the company in that sense. And you said when you joined, you also liked fashion in that sense. So do you think the fact that you enjoyed what you did in the industry that you were in, did it play a part in you actually growing as well?
For me, this particular point is actually the base, and I would say the first thing that I check, or that I even need to apply for a job. So if you look at all the different jobs that I did in different companies that I worked for, I always had a passion for, or was a consumer myself for the product that I had been working on. I know that that's not the case with everyone, but for me, this is just like, this is definitely a prerequisite. I need to also be using the product, or be consumer myself to understand it well, and then to really be, and that gives you, of course, then when you show up at work, you're very authentic, and it just comes naturally to you being excited about it. So for me, I always picked companies, and I always picked roles where this was already the case from the get-go.
Okay, very nice. So I think that makes a nice transition into something which also is very interesting for a person in your position, because you actually come from a non-technical background, right? And you are now the CTO of Zalora, which is quite rare, if I may just put it that way, right? So I guess, tell the listeners, tell me a little bit more about this, because I find this very fascinating.
Yeah. Where should I start? So maybe I'll start with talking about how our team developed organically throughout the years. Okay, so I don't think this was a very conscious decision, but in this very first year when Zalora was created, the product management team was not separate from the engineering team. So product management always reported into the CTO. So you can also say like, okay, it's a CTO, CPO position, but we just call it CTO at Zalora. Like we like to keep things simple. And then because of that, I was always very, very close with the engineers as well. And I think I also found myself sometimes in positions where I was asking myself, like, am I being a bit of the engineering lead right now? The questions that I'm asking, and with the way I'm managing a particular launch, or a particular squad group of people that were working on something. That question popped up throughout the years. However, I never saw myself taking over the CTO role one day, which is kind of funny, right? It's like I always thought I think it's just, yeah, it's now that I'm looking back, I'm like, I always thought like, okay, maybe one day I'll have like a CPO role, or I would love to also have my own company one day and be the CEO. But never ever had I actually really, dreamt of, imagined I would have this CTO title. So what it showed me is that I was kind of limiting my own, you know, possibilities as well, and which direction I could go.
Mhm.
And it's also funny, of course, because as I said, I was reporting to the CTO from the start. So so at some point, you're kind of like, either you cannot advance any further in this company, which is probably, yeah, it's kind of like what I thought that would happen at some point. But then um, what happened was that the previous CTO left Zalora, and I was able to take over the position, or to apply for the position. And in the end, the decision went. The decision of the management team and the board was that I should lead now the engineering organization. And this was, to me, also like the biggest surprise. I literally had to pinch myself and be like, how did this happen in the last 7 years? It's crazy. Yeah, but I'm super happy. I mean, it's like, yeah, I love this team. There are a lot of people on my team who I've been working with since the start, so since 2013, and I think, and that is definitely also part of the reason why I was able to go through the ranks together with a bunch of other people, who are now, product directors, engineering directors, on my team. And, we're still working together. We enjoy what we do. And yeah.
Okay. I will come back to the CTO part because there is so much to unpack there, at least from
Yes.
a leadership standpoint. So, but I'm going to leave that there because I actually want to move back a little bit to when you actually started doing product management, maybe with Zalora. I'm not sure when, but when you did product management, because again, as I mentioned, you came from a non-technical background. What did you feel was your disadvantage and also your advantage coming into product management without the technical background?
Yeah. Well, very, very clear. I had, I think the disadvantage, or the sort of where I felt a bit like, oh, I really don't know this stuff, is I never really coded. Okay, sure, I had some whatever simple coding course at university ages ago, but I never built something big on my own. And in the early days, I definitely ran into one or two developers who were also sort of, who knew that and who were sort of using that, and they were like, oh, you don't know. They're giving me this kind of answer. But I mean, actually also people with a computer science degree get that answer sometimes.
Yes,
I figured out,
you're
okay,
talking to a computer science graduate, and I used to get that crap. So
yeah, so that's just the crap you get as a product manager, right? But I actually think that, or in my experience, the best engineers that I worked with, they don't give you this answer. They sit down and they walk you through, and it's, at the end of the day, it's all about understanding it also from a conceptual point of view. And so this is where I always say I got my technical knowledge from. So
Mhm.
from working with really great engineers who sit down and who explain to me, and then that knowledge of course accumulates over time. And of course I also did my own research and my own learning on the side, and then put on top of that also the practical experience, right? So if you are working at a company like Zalora, which is growing at such a fast pace, you just you just have a chance to build a lot of products within a fairly short amount of time, and that taught me a lot. That practical
Mhm.
experience.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just going to interject here because there is a follow-up question to that.
Yeah.
if let's say, because one of the questions, I don't know about you, but a lot of questions that I get from people who want to get into product management as their career path, some of them come from a technical background, so obviously they're developers, QAs, and roles like that. And then there is the other bucket where they've come in from either a business type role or a advisory role of sorts, basically a non-technical role. So if you had the opportunity to speak to this group, and they're asking you, Silvia, how do I get into product management? Like, what would be the things that you would ask them to focus on, drawing on your experience as a sort of a non-technical person?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I get this question a lot. This is probably the most popular question. Like you said, especially because my profile also, stands for that. So the advice that I usually give is, try to demonstrate that you have already product skills. I think anyone, and really without any technical knowledge, can build a mock-up these days, or build, a website, or there's just so much stuff out there that you can read up upon and learn, and then try to demonstrate it. And whether that's really just as a hobby, or when you apply for a job, you kind of like just give yourself an imaginary task and you showcase that you understand what product management is. That can be really a door opener. And the other thing is also, pick companies or pick also industries where you can benefit from any previous experience that you have. So for example, also one reason, why I was sort of what helped me definitely develop my career in product management was I was working for companies who were consumer products, not necessarily a technical product. So I don't know whether I definitely would have had a much harder time had I gone to a purely technical company. But I spent at least the last 8 to 9 years I spent in e-commerce, and that's very close to business, and I have a business degree. So what I could bring to the table was always this business knowledge and business savviness, and it's still the case today. And it's actually also especially in the CTO role. My engineering leads, they say like, you take care of the budget and you take care of the people management and all of these like things, and I just want to be happy with my code and stay on the deeply technical side. And yeah, that's my advantage, and that was also in every PM position that I had. Make sure you can bring something to the table that the other or the technical people don't have, and then they will respect you for that, and they will really enjoy working with you.
So if, let's say, now the question would be, should I focus on, getting technical knowledge, like, taking some, some front end boot camp versus, just really honing your craft in what you already have. And like you said, build mock-ups or, to do a prototype of sorts. What would you advise?
It's difficult to give like, a very generic answer. Usually I ask people a couple of questions, what's their profile. The thing with product management is like, there's like, you need to have so many skills, right? It's like, you can go in all sorts of directions. And it makes it also overwhelming when you're starting out. Of course, you always feel like, I don't have enough knowledge in this area and that area. Maybe the best way to put this in an answer that is applicable to everyone is follow your gut feeling, and like what interests you the most. And if you get more excited by doing like a front-end development course, then do that. And if you feel like, no, I actually would enjoy it much more to look into some project management, or I don't know, some agile practices, how to how to manage, how to run certain rituals with a product development team, then do that. All of it will help you and benefit you once you get that chance to apply it.
Right, fantastic. So that last point, again, very nicely. I like how you end your answers, because I don't know, it seems very natural. So I wanted to go into the next part, which comes back to your current role of being CTO of Zalora. And that question is, you are a female CTO in a region where female leadership is already rare. A female CTO is actually even more rare. Yeah, how do you feel about that? Like, do you feel like you're now suddenly an icon of, female leadership? Do you feel like you have some unwritten obligation to shine the torch for females all over Southeast Asia or something like that?
The second part, that I do feel an obligation to help other women move forward and just and get lots of opportunities, and I share any advice that I have. Yeah, that definitely is something that developed in the last couple of years. So a few years back, I started to go out to meetups, and I just wanted to mingle with other product people. But what I realized was that, every time when I would do an interview or sit on a panel or whatever, even the smallest thing, afterwards a lot of women would come to me and they would ask me questions and they would speak to me, and I suddenly started to realize, oh my God, yeah, if I have to go out there, I have to talk more about it, because then other women see like, oh, if she can do this, then maybe I can do this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I do feel, definitely a responsibility, and that is a big driver and motivator. Also, why I'm putting myself out there and pushing myself also to do these things. And it's awesome how many fantastic women I've met also while doing this. Just the other day, this was just I think 2 or 3 weeks back, someone asked me like, yeah, can you, I was also doing an interview, and I was like, yeah, can you recommend me another woman in product management who's really awesome? I was like, one? I can give you a list of like 20, 30 of them, right?
Here, take my database.
Sorry?
Here, take my database.
Yeah, I was like, I sent you a whole list, and you should look at them, chat with them. They are awesome. They have very diverse profiles and backgrounds. But of course, it's, I have this, or I have access to this, and my view of female leadership and product management is a little bit different, because I chat with a lot of these women, and that's why my view is more, well, there are more women out there. It's just not enough exposure, and of course there could be and should be also more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So okay, still continuing on that line, as a CTO, as a female leader, it feels like sometimes it's and I don't know, I'm just assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, that it's like a double whammy. Have you been in situations where you've actually felt like you're either being belittled, or you feel like you have to prove yourself harder because, number one, you are a female CTO, one, being female, and two, being a CTO of a very, very leading fashion chain?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. So most of the time I actually feel it's a great conversation opener. And the people who contact me and who want to talk to me, they are very interested in this topic. So of course then the conversation doesn't go in, like, they don't make it hard for me, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's rather, it's very very open and very interested, and then I share, and that's good. But of course there have also been, I've been well, actually, especially in Germany, I've been to some conferences and to some bigger events, and I was so shocked to. There was definitely one event where I was the only woman in the room, and there were like 100 men, and such a it's so weird. It's such a weird feeling. You're like, I was like, I was there with my colleague, and I was like, where are all the women? And he was also looking around. He was like, I don't know, there's something wrong here. like,
Mm.
um, yeah, it's so it does happen, and it feels a bit weird, and I don't have a really good answer,
Mm-hmm.
or some good advice, but other than maybe saying like, yeah, just gravitate towards the people who are really interested and really pushing for more gender diversity, because that's where the positive energy is coming from. That's where
Mm-hmm.
the change is coming
Yeah.
from, and both of those things.
So
Um,
if let's say the scenario is slightly different, right? So and because I've heard this before, right? There is a female product person in a company, and they're having to deal with this where they feel like they're not getting the same respect or given the same kind of ownership in that sense. What would you say would be the best way to sort of tackle that?
Come join my team. Seriously. Join a company, join a team where this is not the case, because there are really awesome teams where this is not the case.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, it's tough. It's tough, right? I think, I mean, I admire anyone who tries to fight the battle, but I imagine it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
And you also need to have some how to say, yeah, you need some help also from your colleagues, right? If they don't want the team to be more diverse, or to listen to different points of view, then and you're surrounded by such people, it's just really, really hard to fight against it, and probably also not very healthy. But if you feel like, even though you are in a minority, and you feel like, hey, but I have colleagues around me who want to change things, who want to change the culture, especially also if you have someone in the leadership team who wants to do that, okay, then then don't move. Then rather support the cause and try to find ways.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how can we hire the next in your example, female PM, female engineer, etc. Like, how make an effort, make a conscious push towards that.
Okay. All right. And in your 7 years working in Singapore, and I know you've traveled quite a lot as well as part of your role. Um, what is your take generally on female leadership in Southeast Asia? Do you think that that's something that needs to be worked on? Have you seen discrimination happen in that sense, or do you think like we're doing okay? We're not too bad. What's your take on that?
Now, I think we definitely need to push the limits, and this is not just specific to Southeast Asia. I really think anywhere in the world. But yeah, let's stick to our region. There's definitely differences in well, I can share from my team. So in Singapore, we have an awesome 50-50 split in the engineering team of like male and females. Um, and it's actually something that happened also quite organically. And it is because well, Singapore is already very diverse, and you also attract a lot of international talent. So we have people from all over Asia, and also from a number of European countries. And And then with this makes this male female ratio. In other locations, it's somewhere in between, and there are some countries where it's really, really difficult, and it's I've been digging into this, of course. Why is this happening? It starts with education. If you're trying to hire in a country where there's hardly any woman in computer science or in any technical field of studies, yeah, of course, it's going to be really hard to hire someone there also to your team. So then we need to ask ourselves, okay, how can we, as early as possible, in someone's childhood, and definitely in schools, and because at university it's then also already too late. How can we change that? There's some fantastic groups out there who are going outside of the school environment, then going to different companies and introducing, and we've hosted a few of them at Zalora as well, where they introduce, okay, these are different job profiles, this is what you can do when you're grown up. And so being very cautious, or paying a lot of attention and making sure that these opportunities are created, and that from as early as possible girls are exposed to, like, you can also pick this kind of job, and as parents also share role models, like, yeah, okay, there is also a female CTO. I think for a child it's probably very natural, but if they're not exposed, they're not going to question it. That's what I mean. But if they're not exposed to it, then of course they think, like, okay, all these technical jobs are more for boys.
Yeah. So yes, and you recently became a mom yourself, right? So congratulations first. But how has this changed your perspective of working as well? Has it changed, or do you think it's still the same?
It's still a bit early to tell because I'm on maternity leave. So that means essentially, I haven't been exposed yet to, okay, how do I manage to be a mom, spend enough time with my son, and also I have this challenging and time-consuming job. So I haven't been fully exposed to that yet. But it's been an interesting journey, during the pregnancy, and then now also being on maternity leave. So I'm off for 4 months, and of course that poses some questions like, okay, who's gonna run the show then, and how is the company going to handle that? Because well, going back to what you just mentioned a couple of times, if the CTO is a man, then they might have just 2 weeks off or 4 weeks off at most. It's a little bit different with me. So yeah, but it has been going well for me, but definitely posed also a couple of questions, like, okay, how are we going to do this, and how's everyone else reacting to this as well? Yeah, and supporting me.
Okay, I've got one last question with regards to female leadership, and that question is, and this is more targeted to regardless of who is in the product leadership role, so it could be male or female. But the question would be, how would people in product leadership positions help to groom female leadership? So this is a slightly different question, right? So I know the popular questions are always, how do you be more inclusive? But I actually feel that a lot of companies, even in Southeast Asia, have been a lot more open to gender diversity, and I think that's great. But then the other question then becomes, how are there any specific things that we would need to do to groom female leadership, or is there like no difference, just treat everyone the same?
Well, I think it's important to not be biased, or to tackle also unconscious bias. So this thing of, like, okay, let's make sure we really treat everyone the same, or rather fairly, is important. But I don't think it's enough, actually. I really don't think it's enough, because this in a number of countries, there has already been a push, to have more women in the workforce and to have more women in specific roles for years. And it's just not changing fast enough. So it's not enough. I think that has to be really more than that. And
Even specific for the product role. Yeah, because I mean, in
yeah,
general, I would think so, but even within the product scene as well.
yeah, I think so. I don't think that the product scene is so different there. So let's go back to the situation that you mentioned earlier. Like if you have a team and you have only men on the team, or let's say the majority of men on the team, I think there is a very, very high chance that who the the people who are hiring, that they're going to hire again profiles which are very similar to them. And I'm saying that because I have the same kind of bias as well. When I speak to a candidate, and the candidate, whether male or female, has certain things in his or her work experience which are similar to mine, or just similar mindset, and we connect very well, of course I get really excited and I want to hire this person, right? So this is something that's normal and that's happening to everyone. But as you are hiring one person after the other, just really check and make sure that okay, are we really always only hiring men, or is there also, like, do we really give the same chance also to a female candidate, and shouldn't we maybe pick someone who brings a completely different skill set or mindset or whatever to the table? Is this representative, is this team also representative of our customer base? I mean, that could be another approach, and that ties very well in with also your business and your business strategy. If you reflect and say, like, okay, who are the people on this team? Is this also representative of who we are targeting as a customer? That could be a good driver. Just one example.
Okay. Actually, sorry, I'm actually going to push the envelope just a little bit. I initially said last question, but I really want to ask this question. It's going to make me super unpopular. But do you think that this bias also happens the other way? Like, and this is something that's just purely out of curiosity. Like, and I want to be explicit about this so that the listeners don't get this the wrong way. But do you think, like, sometimes in our efforts to be more diverse, we actually, push all the way the other way, such that, in this case, females get all the, dips in that sense, first choice, and other candidates don't? It's a super, super thorny question, but I just wanted to ask it, especially since you are a female.
Yeah. Well, what I'm not saying is that, just hire the person because she's a woman, right? Obviously, there's so many other things also that need to tick the box, etc. Because when once this woman or the person comes in and she needs to do the job, in order for her to be successful, she also needs to bring all the other skills to the table. So that's definitely very important. But I never really, I mean, usually teams or hiring managers are not that, they're not just blindly following that. Like, okay, I pick one on this. You look at the person holistically, and of course, all the other boxes have to take. And yes, that probably means that you have to interview a few more people, because we are in this situation that for most companies, a lot more men apply than women apply. Probably this has been also a bit easier for me at Zalora, and it's easier, I think, because of two things. So one, our customer base is primarily female. That definitely has an influence also on what I shared earlier, that there's like a 50-50 split team.
Yeah.
And the second thing is then also, of course, if I show up and I go out and recruit, like I said, it's much easier for me to get in touch with women who want to apply for the job or who want some mentoring, etc. And when we have an open role, I do go back to my network, and I do go back to that email, or to that business card that someone gave me a few months back, and said like, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing. So that has made it easier for me to have a 50-50 split. But other leaders can do this too, right? It's not like such a secret sauce. That's what I mean with a conscious effort. Like, you have to ask yourself, like, okay, how am I going to put the perfect in my world, in my point of view? How am I going to put the perfect and the a diverse team together, and then put in that effort.
Okay. All right. So if, let's say, and again, I know I'm totally breaking my promise here. I promised I'll move on, but you keep uncovering gems here that I really want to
Go for it.
go on. Yeah. So if, to the female listeners who are watching or listening to this show, who are in, product roles, whether it be product managers or product designers, I think doesn't really matter that much. What would your advice to them be? Like, if you could say like one thing to all the female leaders in product and design in Southeast Asia, what would you say to them?
Um, to search for someone who can support you, and whether it's give you a role where you can prove yourself, or if you are in a role, then someone on the leadership team who can really pull you forward and pull you through the ranks, because this has definitely worked for me. And if you feel like there is no such person in the organization, I seriously mean it. Maybe think about whether it's the right work environment. It doesn't mean that it's a bad company or whatever. I mean, everyone is so different. You need to find the work environment that fits you well, and where you can thrive. But this support is that you have someone who's supporting you, and is extremely important. And so, maybe let me throw this back at you. I think, because I always get this question, obviously, like, how can we get more female leaders? How can we get more female product managers? I think probably the bigger push will come if you ask the men, if you ask the men on your show, what do you think about this topic? Why? Because so either you are talking to someone who already has spent quite some time thinking and reflecting on it, and you're gonna find, and probably you're gonna hear a more interesting story than mine, what this male leader did or male product manager did to support diversity. Or if that's not the case yet, then that triggers like a change of perspective, and then that provokes some new thoughts. And I think that's where everyone then starts to benefit.
Very, very interesting indeed. Yes, yes.
I will be checking whether in the next couple of
yes,
you're going to ask this question.
keep tabs, and I can assure you that it's going to come up. It will come up.
Awesome.
Okay, so let's move to the last part of the show, right? So this is actually my favorite part of the show. I actually asked you to choose a song that you would recommend to the listeners of the Product Uncensored show. Yeah. And for you, there's obviously a little bit more in it, given that you were in the music industry previously, so high hopes for you. And you chose a song from a singer called Sarah Connor. I won't even attempt to say the title because so why don't you give us the title and also why you chose the song?
Yes. So the name of the song is schön, bist. I can teach you later. That's good. And why did I pick the song? So this is a German singer, and I thought, I wanted to pick something that probably most people haven't heard about, a song and a singer. Especially also, yeah, she sings in German, and German is not the most melodic language. You know, it's a bit. Um, yeah, I don't know exactly how it sounds for non-German speakers, but most people say German is a bit harsh and a bit hard. It's just not. It's yeah. I
And I
mean,
think part
English
of
is.
that, and I think part of that is also uh, just generalization, right? Because like the most famous meme will be that movie about Hitler and him speaking really, really harsh, and his
Oh
style is really
God,
harsh. So
yes.
I can't help but think that has played into even the musical side of things. Where like, yeah, it sounds a little bit harsh, isn't it? So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's why I want to push the boundaries also a little
Hmm.
bit by picking this song, because it is a love song, and it's actually it's very emotional, and it's very, very romantic. And also the singer, she has one of those powerhouse voices, which I love. I'm a big fan of you know. Mariah Carey, Christina Aguilera, you name it, like these big, big, big
Boomy
volume
voices.
voices. And yeah, she also has this style. But yeah, she sings in German. And then the other thing that made me pick this is, like I said, it's a love song, but she actually wrote it for her son. And since I'm a new mom, um, I'm also just completely in love with my little baby boy at the moment, and so that fits uh, my current, my emotions, and
Hmm.
also the phase that I'm in life. Yeah, but it was hard to pick. But yeah, as you can tell, I put quite some thought into it. Yeah, I wanted to pick my first choice was actually a Mariah Carey song, because she was the first artist that I was absolutely crazy about. So the early 90s,
Hmm.
I was listening to her songs day in and day out. And that's how really this love for music started. Yeah, but she's very famous, and
Yeah.
a lot of people know her songs, so I thought I'd rather pick something that people might have not heard yet, and get them
Mm.
curious.
Yeah, yeah, it is very interesting because I actually tried to search for the English translation of the lyrics, and now when you talk about how it was written for her son and things like that, it's very interesting. The song kind of takes on a different meaning in that sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah, it
very
does.
fantastic. Yeah, and also very interesting as well. Sarah Connor is actually German American, right? And she actually chose to sing in German instead of English.
Yeah. Well, this is also an interesting story about her. So the name Sarah Connor, yeah, it sounds also very American, but I'm actually not sure. I think this is a stage name, or this is her artist name.
Ah.
But you are right that I think her dad is American.
Okay.
But
Okay.
she was born and raised in Germany, and she started in 99 or 2000 singing in English. So
Ah. Okay.
for for the first 15 years, all her records, everything was recorded in English, pop, R&B style, and she wrote her own songs as well. And then in 2015, she made a hard cut, and she said, like, I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna change my musical style completely. So she stopped the dancing, the costumes, the big makeup, whatever. Just toned down everything. Just wanted her voice to
Voice.
shine, and she always performs with a live band, and by bringing out that authenticity, for her was also important to then switch to German. And I love that about her as well, because knowing how the industry works, this is definitely something that's very, very hard for an artist to do.
Hmm.
And I think it was definitely her idea, and not a record
Yeah. Her
company or
manager
man.
and a record were like, no, no, this is gonna affect
They were
sales.
probably scared to death. They were like, what? Because this is such a bold
Yeah.
move. But it served her really well. I mean, she has been, I think she has even become more popular and more successful when she made that switch
Switch.
or that change in style
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
2015.
Yeah, it's very interesting as well because I must admit that when you sent me this song, right, the first thing that came to mind was not a singer, but you also know that Sarah Connor is the name of the female hero in the Terminator series, and so I was like, well, wow, she chose a song from a movie from the Terminator, and they were like, oh no, that's actually her name. So yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah. So as usual, the link to the song will be at the end of the show. Actually, I also put it up usually when the song is first mentioned, but unfortunately that tag doesn't seem to show up very easily seen. So but yeah, if you look at it, it'll be actually on the top right of your video, if you're watching the YouTube. All right. So yeah, I've taken a bit longer than anticipated. So, but I think it's totally great because we really managed to dive into the two areas which I think you stand out from many other leaders, not just in Southeast Asia, but in general. And number one would be just non-technical product management, and that's something that's not too common. And also female leadership. So thank you so much for that. And I also know that you've got a baby to take care of, and I really appreciate. Please thank your husband as well for really taking
Oh,
over so that we could have this session.
yeah.
Yeah, so thank you so much. I wish Zalora all the best, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
Thanks, Colin. This is
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you. So yes, that was Silvia Thom, who came on today's show, and I want to thank everyone who has listened and watched till here. If you have enjoyed today's show on YouTube, please like, subscribe, or download and follow if you're listening to the podcast. You can also find some of my writings at the website, which is www.productuncensored.com. So until our next episode, stay safe and keep rocking. Bye bye.